There are only so many hours in a day, and I know that this community is full of passionate creatives who want time to work on your own passions, have other hobbies outside of that, hang out with your family and friends. You might work a full-time job, a part-time job, multiple jobs on top of wanting to make an impact with your work and still have time to market it on top of that, which is so important for making an impact and making some income from your work as well. I get asked a lot how I get so many things done. And in this video today, I want to share some of my productivity habits that hopefully you can apply to your own schedule and your own life. Now, I want to say to start us off that right now I do this full time. I run Marketing by Shelby. I work on my author brand and writing my books, and that makes up my career. However, there was a time when I did work a full-time job and work on my author brand and my books and marketing them outside of that job. And there was a time when I was a full-time college student working multiple internships and working on my author brand outside of that. So if you are in that position, I completely understand. The other thing I want to say is that I don't have kids to take care of. I'm not a caretaker for anyone, but I also understand that when you're also balancing raising a child or taking care of a human in some capacity, that also takes a lot of your energy and your time and attention too. So let's just go ahead and get into the tips that I wanted to share with you today. The first one is one that I think affected me for a long time, and that is figuring out when your brain and when your body is most active and energized and available to pursue what you're looking to pursue. For the longest time, I would watch these videos on YouTube of my 5 a.m. productive morning routine. And I wake up and I roll out of bed and I'm so productive from the minute I wake up. And this is how I do it. And while I do absolutely believe that sometimes we just don't feel the motivation and we just have to push ourselves to do it anyway, I tried so hard to have this early morning productivity routine and get a lot done in the mornings. And after a while of trying that, I realized that it's just not when my body and my brain works best. I don't roll out of bed with my brain ready to go, making decisions and being creative. And so in the mornings, I've learned that I really like a slower morning. There are days where I do have to hop right into work because there's a lot to do, but I try to know and recognize that a lot of work for me is going to get done in the afternoon and sometimes even the evenings. Whenever I was in college and going to classes all day and working internships, and whenever I worked a full-time job, my evenings were the hours that I was available to do other things. And so I don't know if that's just my brain got used to that, but I also think that that's just when I am the most awake and when I'm able to be productive. So I honor that. I don't like to work in the evenings a lot now that I do have the full day to get things done. However, I know that typically the afternoons/late afternoons are best for me. So with that being said, I highly recommend that you try and experiment with what times you're most awake. You can journal about what you got done at what time period, noticing how you're feeling. Is it feeling easier to get more work done at a certain time? And even do this during your full-time job as well, because I think it's just good to know, even if you aren't able to work on your passions during, your job, that you still are able to keep track of that so that you know for the future when you're kind of most productive. The next thing that I do that I didn't really do whenever I was working a full-time job is break down my daily schedule pretty much by the hour. I plug in waking up, I plug in my slower morning routine of breakfast, and sometimes I'll plug in a workout or I'll want to read before I start working. And then I plug in each task throughout the day and attempt to align it with how long it will take me. And sometimes it takes longer, sometimes it's shorter. I plug in any meetings that I have. I plug in travel if I have to go somewhere for a meeting, or I want to make sure that I leave the house and go to a coffee shop to work for a couple hours. I'll plug that in as well and really try to schedule out my day. And for some people, that might not work at all. You might hate feeling like you have this structure. Every day is different for me, and I really love that. But this strategy helps me feel like I have a little bit of structure and that every day isn't so different because my routine is kind of written down. So it changes day to day. At the end of each day, I'll take off what I accomplished from my schedule and then add on my new schedule for the next day. And that really helps me feel like I can go to bed knowing that I have everything written down for the next day and that I'm not going to forget. Now, with that also comes my to-do list and making sure that everything in my head comes out onto paper. That has really slowed down my productivity in the past because I will be thinking of a bunch of different things that I have to do while I'm trying to work on one task. And then I pull myself away from that one task and start thinking about all these other things I have to do or just start doing them. But whenever I actually take the time to write down every single thing that I have to do, this may be overwhelming to some people. Like, you might not like seeing a long to-do list, but I personally would rather see a long to-do list than know that in my head, I'm constantly switching back and forth between what I have to do. So I like that strategy. I like to have my full schedule laid out by the hour. And then I like to also have a to-do list over to the side of that of extra things that I know I'm not going to fit in today, but that are on my list. I'm not going to forget them and I can come back to them when I'm ready. So that's a little bit about how I plan out my days and my to-do lists. And to divide that even further, I really like to prioritize my projects and my to-dos. I like to prioritize them into the must-dos. I really want to accomplish these things today, or I need to accomplish these things today, and the nice-to-haves. And those are things that are things I can do later in the week and they won't be detrimental that I didn't do them today, or things that can be even put off to when I have more time, which I say that. And then as we all know, life happens and it's usually not like we just suddenly have more time. But I do think that it's important to prioritize things and know that we might not be able to accomplish our entire to-do list today, and that's okay. Let's focus on the big things, the 3 things that I really know that I can get done today. And then I can plug in little things that take a few minutes as I go. Okay, the next productivity idea that I have for you is to try tracking your time for around a week or so. You can do it longer, of course, but I think 1 week of tracking your time whenever you either sit down at your desk to work, or you're working on your hobbies, or you're trying to get things done with your business, just tracking your time and seeing where your time is going can be so helpful in becoming more productive. I think one of the biggest things that I do is whenever I really need to sit down and get a project done, I put my phone away, I close all my tabs except for the ones that I need, and I set a timer for around 20 minutes and just say, like, I know I can just focus on this for 20 minutes. At the very minimum, I know that I can commit to that. And then oftentimes I'll end up going longer because I get into focus mode and I keep going. But tracking your time at the end of the week will give you a really good sense of how long you're spending on this thing, how long you're spending on this thing, what time is being wasted. Like, really be honest with yourself. Don't try to cheat the system whenever you're tracking your time. And if you grab your phone to start scrolling, track that, even if it's 5 minutes, because by the end of the week, that could have added up to multiple hours. And so I think that that's really helpful just to see, okay, I thought I was only spending 30 minutes a week writing my weekly newsletter, but it's actually been taking me an hour and a half. How can I cut that down? Or how can I make that process faster? And so that's really helpful. And that's something that I do every few months. I don't do it every single day, but I'll do it every few months just to see what's changed. Have I gotten faster at this? Is this thing taking me way longer than I think it is? So a tool that I use, it's a free tool. It's called Toggl, Toggl. And there's lots of different free tracking tools out there if you just search for time tracking. But that's one that I typically will use, and just click start. It will track your time, and then you just hit stop whenever you're done with that task. And you have to kind of have discipline and be a little hard on yourself. If you do get distracted, make sure you put that in, like got distracted answering emails for 10 minutes or whatever it may be, and try your best, estimate to guess. But that's very helpful. I already kind of mentioned the timer thing, but whenever I'm having a really hard time focusing, I will use a Pomodoro timer, which is a method where you focus for 25 minutes and then you have a 5-minute break. And you can do either a short break or a long break. If you Google Pomodoro method or Pomodoro timer, there's a bunch of free timers that will pop up that you can try out. For me, I find that 20 to 25 minutes is good if I'm just working on like a smaller project. But if I really want to get into deep focus mode and try to get an hour or 2 of work done, that timer will distract me and then my focus is gone and I have to start over. So if I really want to get into deep focus mode, I don't use this. But if it's a day where I'm just really having a hard time focusing and I don't really want to work, my motivation isn't really there, I will use that because I know that I can have the discipline to just 20 minutes of work, even if I'm still having trouble focusing, I can commit to, I'm going to sit down for 20 minutes and I'm going to do my very best to focus in that 20 minutes. And so I think that that's like a little trick or tip for you if you do have a hard time focusing or you're in a stressful situation, just trying to commit to a small period of time. And that way I can still say, okay, I wasn't super productive today, but I did what I could. I committed to getting a certain amount of work done, and I did that. But along those same lines with the Pomodoro method, I do think breaks are so beneficial. And I used to get mad at myself because I would find myself going for my phone or getting up and walking around and being like, why can't you just sit there and do your work for a long period of time? But breaks really help me. So now I build in breaks that I don't feel bad about it. You shouldn't feel bad about it. We all need breaks. And for me, it's really worked to build them in so that way I'm not just constantly getting up or constantly looking for something else to do, but knowing that I have a few built in, it's like something to look forward to after I do a couple of hours of work. Okay, let's go do something. And I don't want that to sound like it's a reward, because breaks aren't a reward. You should always be taking breaks. It's important for us. It's good for us. But that is something that I think is really helpful to build in and not feel ashamed for doing it. The next thing is really getting in the habit of writing things down when you think of them. If I am working and I start thinking about other things I have to do, rather than switching my focus to doing those things, I'll just jot them down really quickly. I'm a pen and paper person. I like to just have like a post-it note of things that I think of, and then I can add them into my schedule later. But doing that allows me to know that, okay, you didn't forget it, it's written down, but now we need to get back to the task and focus. And that has really helped me because for so many years, and I don't know why, and maybe you're the same way, or maybe you do write things down, but I would think of things and start thinking about how stressed I am or how much I have to do and never write it down, and just be completely pulled away from focus whenever I'm doing something. But it's so easy to just jot it down for a few seconds. So I don't know why for years I never did that and just let it all accumulate in my head. And it's just so much easier when you take a few moments to write it down. I also like to, while I'm planning my daily schedule for the next day, just write down everything that's in my brain that I have as a to-do that I might have thought of throughout the day. And so that way I know that I'm going to bed without all those to-dos floating around in my head. It's not a perfect method. I still have things in my head sometimes that I'll think of, and then I'll grab my phone and write it down in the middle of the night. But it's an improvement over what I've done in the past. I hope that one or more of these tips will be helpful for you to try. I think that it's so important to remember that we all have different brains. We all have different times of day that we feel the most energetic or the most productive. And so finding those times for you and finding those productivity tips that work best for you just takes experimentation and trying new things and seeing how you go. So I enjoy, journaling about that to try to figure out when my times are, or trying out new tips and implementing them for a while and seeing, okay, is this actually working for me or is it not? So just keep in mind that if some of these things don't work for you and some of them do, that's still a win, and that we don't all have to have the exact same structure of how we do things. If you are new here, please go ahead and hit subscribe so you don't miss new videos every single week. I mostly talk about marketing strategy, but today I just wanted to talk about productivity because I think it's so important to have a balance and be able to fit in everything that we want to do, but also we still have our priorities and our hobbies and our passions outside of our work. So I hope you found this video helpful. Please give it a thumbs up if you did. And YouTube thinks that this is the next best video for you to watch. So I hope that you enjoy that one, and I will see you in the next video. Bye.